Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jim Hanlon. I'm the CEO here at the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship, or COVE. It's a real pleasure to be joining you here this afternoon. I wish we could all be together as we normally are for Ocean Connectors, but obviously that's not possible under the current circumstances, and we're real pleased to be engaging with you through the magic of the internet. I want to thank, first of all, Irving Shipbuilding, who is our main corporate sponsor for everything we do here at COVE, and we really value the relationship we continue to have with the folks at Irving Shipbuilding. In addition, we have two corporate sponsors for our ongoing Ocean Connector series, the law firm Cox and Palmer, and also Killam Properties, and we're very proud of that relationship and thank them for their continuing support of our Ocean Connector events. I also want to do a bit of a shout out to a recent MOU that we've just signed, a Memorandum of Understanding with Ignite Labs down in Yarmouth with Doug Jones's organization. They're doing some wonderful work down there broadly across all of the economy in that region of Nova Scotia in terms of economic development. But very specifically, they are bringing together a real body of expertise around technology related to the fisheries industry. And so we're really valuing that ongoing relationship now memorialized with a new Memorandum of Understanding with Ignite Labs. And in fact, the CEO of Ignite Labs, Doug Jones, will be our next speaker at the next Ocean Connector coming up May 22nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So stay tuned for more information on that. If you haven't heard of Ignite Labs, you'll get to learn a lot more about it from Doug on later in May. You should also have received recently our COVE newsletter. It should be in your inbox as of this morning. If you're not finding it there, there's one of two reasons. It could be in your junk mail, so check your junk mail in case it's been routed there. And if you're still not finding it, please go onto our webpage, coveocean.com, and do sign up for our newsletter. I know we have some folks online here that have not traditionally come to our Ocean Connector event, so if you're interested in staying in touch with us here at COVE, please sign up for our newsletter and future announcements. In terms of the chat room, you're probably coming onto the session this afternoon in one of two ways. You're either watching us on Zoom or you may be watching on YouTube. If you're using Zoom, we'd invite you to ask questions along the way using the chat function. And on Zoom, that will be on the bottom of your screen as one of your buttons down there. So if you've got questions or comments or things you want to convey to the speaker this afternoon, please use that chat function. If you're doing your viewing through YouTube, same idea, use chat, but it'll be on the right of your screen as you're looking at it on your home computer screen. So please do engage with us. We want to hear the questions coming from the audience as well. So without further ado, I want to take a chance to introduce you to our speaker this afternoon. And our speaker is, in fact, Chris Whitt. Chris is a project engineer and project manager at JASCO Applied Services here in Halifax. And over the span of his career, he's been involved with many wide-scale ocean acoustic projects, particularly those involving Arctic programs, from equipment design and mooring preparation to actually participating himself in many Arctic cruises. Chris is a registered professional engineer here in Nova Scotia. He completed his undergraduate Bachelor of Engineering degree in 2000 and his master's degree in engineering in 2010 at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland. Chris's early academic training started in digital communications and software engineering and continued to signal processing and broadband beamforming for acoustics. A long-standing interest in acoustics saw him apply that as he joined JASCO in 2017. With JASCO, Chris has designed and deployed moorings for everything from near shore to deep ocean basins. Significant projects include multi-year Arctic measurements with acoustic data loggers, measuring biological and shipping noise using cabled observatories such as Venus, and wireless systems using Wi-Fi and Iridium. Also integrated acoustic sensors into gliders and other autonomous platforms. A common theme through all these projects is automating the analysis of multi-terabyte data sets. Chris is now the field support lead for JASCO worldwide and supervises training of all field staff, as well as mentoring engineering students. Currently, Chris is focusing on long-term soundscape studies and ambient noise statistics. So that's his professional career. In addition to that, he spends a huge amount of his volunteer time professionally with the IEEE, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about what the IEEE is all about in a few moments. But in particular, Chris works on the administrative committee of the Oceanic Engineering Society, which is one of the constituent societies of the IEEE. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the podium over to Chris, and he's going to tell us about some wonderful news about a conference coming to Halifax in 2024. Chris, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Jim. Really appreciate you having me for this first COVE Virtual Connector. And I'm really excited that we can use this opportunity to tell everyone about this really exciting event that's coming to Halifax. I know a lot of people in the audience are a little bit familiar with OCEANS, the OCEANS Conference, but I hope that today you'll get a bit of a sense of what OCEANS Conference is and why we are so excited about it, and then how we can all be a part of the OCEANS 2024 team. So first of all, what is an OCEANS conference? And I mean, it is a conference, so I think most of us have an idea of what a conference is in general. OCEANS in particular fills a very exciting niche in ocean technology because it is a blend of science and engineering and applications. So we have a wide range of technical sessions and a fully blown, full-fledged trade show and exhibition, paper sessions, and it covers all areas of oceanic science and engineering. The OCEANS Conference has been going on for over 50 years, and there's been over 70 conferences held. Right now, we're doing it twice annually on a global rotation, and it's actually been in Halifax a number of times previously, 1974, 87, and 97. And I know even now there's lots of people in the community here who have been at OCEANS around the world and probably remember the one in St. John's, Newfoundland in 2015. I've got a screenshot of some of the past ones here, as well as the upcoming ones this year. Of course, we're all aware of the changes due to COVID-19, and we're tracking that as best we can. But yeah, OCEANS conferences have been ongoing, and like I said, it's a really interesting niche in the ocean tech community. So a sense of scale, an OCEANS conference can be anywhere from 1,000 up to 2,000 delegates, over 100 exhibitors in the trade floor, technical talks, posters or oral sessions, several hundred in each conference. I maybe underestimate that number a little bit. At each conference is a little bit different. That rotation I mentioned will usually have an OCEANS conference in North America in the fall, and then an OCEANS conference in the rest of the world in the spring. Each conference will have panel discussions, technical tours, there's award ceremonies, receptions, professional, social activities, a lot of stuff for students, networking events, poster competitions. There's young professional and women in engineering events and opportunities. There's side events, there's planning workshops on both national and international levels. And of course, what we all value in a conference is the personal connections and the networking. So if you have never been to an OCEANS conference, this is a rough idea what it would look like. And this is maybe a boring picture, but the idea is that it's a 4-day event usually, and the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are kind of the core of it, with technical sessions and exhibits in parallel. There will typically be evening events and maybe stuff on the trade show floor early in the evening, with exhibitor receptions and social activities in the trade floor itself. Then there might be a gala event on a Wednesday night. There's usually pre-events. Sometimes it's on Monday. Sometimes it'll be at the end of the conference on Thursday or Friday, and each conference is a little different this way. But there'll be tutorials and on-water demos during the time that, say, exhibitors are setting up in the exhibit hall. And then, of course, there'll be, icebreakers and welcome events the first day. And the audience is really broad. You get engineers, you get scientists, you get students, young professionals, you get stakeholders from communities, from governance, and then, of course, the companies and the industry professionals that participate in the trade show and exhibition. Because of the global reach of the conference, because it's always moving around the world, you get a really good mix of people from North America, Europe, Asia, everywhere. Jim mentioned IEEE Oceanic Engineering Society, and the OCEANS Conference is actually co-sponsored by 2 different societies. And the 2 societies, the Oceanic Engineering Society, as well as the Marine Technology Society. The 2 societies are the sustaining force of the conference. They have the financial backing, the organization, and the continuity. And I've already mentioned the 50 years of experience. And then the technical publications, the papers, posters, get archived and published through IEEE Explore. For those of you who aren't familiar with the societies, there's just a really brief touch on that. IEEE itself is the world's largest professional organization dedicated to technology topics. And the tagline for IEEE is Advancing Technology for Humanity. It's a really big tent. There's actually 45 different technical societies and councils within IEEE, in addition to several other big units on top of that. IEEE Oceanic Engineering Society is one of the societies within IEEE, as Jim mentioned. IEEE OES strives to advance theory and practice of technology, engineering, and related arts and sciences in all bodies of water. The Marine Technology Society has a fairly similar interest, and that is awareness, understanding, advancement, and application of marine technology. So I interact with MTS through my volunteer roles. I'm not an MTS leader per se, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but I feel like they focus a little bit on the application side, whereas IEEE OES is, maybe it's unfair to say broader, but covers the research and science and engineering side. So where are we with OCEANS 2024? I talked about what an OCEANS conference is, and we've said the conference is coming to Halifax in 2024. How did that come about, and where are we now? Well, it started, there are volunteers here, and our honorary chair, Dr. Farial El-Hawari, she has been involved in at least 2 of those previous 3 OCEANS conferences here in Halifax, and I'm sure some of us do remember those conferences. So there's always been sort of an awareness of oceans and an interest of bringing oceans back to Halifax, but it started in earnest for this edition in 2018. The OCEANS 2018 conference in Charleston, North Carolina, I attended, and I presented a letter of intent that we wanted to host a future conference. The Society's reconnaissance committees did a site visit last year, about 8 months ago, and then we presented a formal bid and a rough budget and all that in Seattle, the OCEANS 2019 conference last October. By the way, it was fantastic to see the Atlantic Canadian Pavilion there and all the Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canadian and Canadian companies exhibiting. And so the stage right now is right here. We're telling the community about it, and we're starting discussions. We want to get people excited, people interested, involved. We have to develop themes. We have to come up with some unique ideas. We have to find a way to top that really fun gala at the Museum of Pop Art. Was it Modern Art or Popular Art in Seattle? That was pretty cool. And that there's ongoing opportunities to build interest in Halifax, in Atlantic Canada, and in Canada Ocean Tech. There's lots of those possibilities, but I want to just highlight one of them, which is the existing OCEANS conferences from now through to 24. And I do believe that Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency and other groups and like COVE are supporting more exhibitions, Atlantic Canadian delegations to future conferences. So I really would encourage those of you who are working for small ocean tech companies or big ones in Atlantic Canada and Canada to participate and go to those other events, and not even just oceans conferences, but other conferences that you go to, other events that go to, meetings. Participate in those and tell your colleagues, tell your networks that it's coming to Halifax in 2024. And this is really about, one part of it's about telling the world about Atlantic Canadian ocean tech, but the other part of it's about just strengthening the ocean technology, the ocean community in general. And so us participating in other events, building those connections that will help bring people to Halifax in 2024. A little bit farther out on the horizon, we need to think about formalizing the planning committee and getting into the detailed planning and preparation. We're not quite into the nitty-gritty of that stuff yet. We still have a couple of years, but we're starting to slow burn now. On that topic, here are the people who have already committed to being involved with the local organizing committee. I mentioned Dr. Farial El-Hawari, our honorary chair, has been involved with IEEE OES for a long time, including previous editions of the conference in Halifax. I'm going to be the general chair, so I'll take the lead responsibility for organizing the 24 edition. Our program chair is Dr. May Sito. A lot of you may know her from Defense Research Canada and ISC, and now at Dalhousie as the Irving Shipbuilding Chair. I I should have rehearsed that. I don't know your exact title, but Dr. Cito has been very involved in ocean technology for her whole career. You all know Jim, who introduced me, and he's going to be our exhibits chair. And our finance chair, Dr. Michael Lamoureux, is a long-term IEEE volunteer who's got a lot of experience with conferences and finances. So why Halifax? Why is it so exciting to bring the community to us? And this is the part I don't really need to include in this presentation because I think I'm preaching to the choir here. But this was part of my pitch in Seattle and part of the pitch to the societies over the past couple of years. And even then it was preaching to the choir because most of those senior leaders, those volunteers have been to Halifax for workshops, have been to the previous conferences here, were in St. John's in 2015. And they know that we have a vibrant ocean tech community and that we're an ocean tech capital. For us, it's an opportunity to showcase not just Halifax or Nova Scotia or Atlantic Canada, but all of Canada. I think Canada is really hitting above its weight in ocean tech, and that's part of the selling point of bringing oceans to us. And not only is it the ocean tech, the vibrant community, but Halifax is just a great fit. It's a really good sized city. It's a place people want to come. We've got the right facilities. We've got the right appeal. We've got the maritime history. We've got dining, entertainment, music, festivals, heritage sites, and just the Halifax Harbourfront is a really great selling point. The convention center, most of you are aware, of course, that the brand new convention center is open now and it's been in operation. It's been used for several ocean-related events, H2O, some of the planning meetings for the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. It's a perfect size venue. And one of the really good features of it is that all of the facilities we need, the conference space, the ballrooms, the exhibit rooms, are all really compactly located, floors up above and below each other. So all of the events in a conference, and especially an oceans conference, are going to be right together in one place. If you haven't seen the inside of it, it's really nice. It's really well laid out. There's lots of good spaces. And this picture you can kind of vaguely see in the background is just one of the two big multifunction spaces. Of course, we don't know exactly how it's going to be laid out or where each different part of the conference is going to be. But maybe if we're lucky, if we can fit it in there, it would be nice to put the exhibit floor up in that top one with the great views of the harbor. You can't fit 3,000 people in that room, but the convention center as a whole can accommodate events of up to 3,000 people. And then we've got those ocean views from the multifunction spaces and from one of these, this ballroom. Again, preaching to the choir, I think we all are aware of the depth and breadth of the ocean technology sector in Atlantic Canada. We've got the Navy, we've got research in lots of different institutions. We've got defense and ocean tech companies, entrepreneurship and incubators. And we are an Arctic gateway, we're a shipbuilding port, and we're a industry port, containers and container shipping and other industries. Part of that enthusiasm, part of the selling point to the societies has been the broad support and interest in bringing oceans to Halifax. And these logos here are organizations, institutions in the community that have given us some indication of support. We're not going out now and asking for, sponsorships or money or anything like that. But, I didn't just throw a bunch of logos on the slide deck here. Jim went out and did a lot of work, and we talked to people, and every one of these institutions or organizations has said, yes, we want to be a part, we want to support Oceans 2024 in some way. And the same thing with industry. OTCNS was one of the first ones to sign up, and then all these other companies. And so if you're a decision maker or a leader in an ocean tech company on this webinar and your logo is not on this slide, talk to me because we want you involved. So how do we get involved? I've already talked a little bit about socializing the idea. Save the date, September of 2024. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, your customers, your suppliers, your partners, your research collaborators. My mission, my goal from the beginning of this is I want to make an oceans conference that is as beneficial as it can be for the ocean tech community in general, for Atlantic Canada, for Halifax. And I don't have any magic ideas. I don't have the answer to that. But what I need is your ideas and your help to tell me what's going to make this as good as it possibly can be. So if you know of partners, stakeholders that we should be in touch with, please let us know, find ways to get in touch. We want to look at high-level support from industry, from government, from research communities. In the future, a year or two down the road, we're going to be looking at identifying some key team members and then, building awareness and coordinating with complementary events. There's a lot of other ocean tech events that happen in Atlantic Canada and in Canada, and we don't want to compete, we want to coordinate. And of course, there'll come a time when we're going to look at, fundraising and sponsorships and put your logo on this and sponsor that, and that'll come in time, but that's a year or two down the road. So that's really it. That's my presentation, and I think there's you maybe didn't quite notice at the bottom of the screen there's a web link that is a place you can express interest as an individual. It's sort of the conference official website, and you can fill out a form and get on a mailing list about future Oceans conferences. But if you want to talk more specifically about organizing the event, my email address is on the screen. You can talk to me. You can email me directly. And I think maybe Jim will talk about this in a bit, but we might be sending out a survey after this webinar, partly to get your feedback on the COVE virtual connector, but also it's an opportunity for you to connect with Jim and myself if you want to be involved in a more concrete way. So that's it, Jim, back to you.
That's great, Chris. Thanks very much. That's really informative. And every time I hear the whole pitch, I get more and more excited about what's coming up in 2024. Just to sort of pick on a couple of themes here. One of the questions that I always have around the Oceans conferences is how do you, in a really clever way, make sure there's good engagement between the researchers that are being presented and the researchers that are presenting them on the one hand, and the industry folks that are there on the trade show floor. Just let's talk a little bit, if you would, about what your thoughts are on how that can be done well for a good Oceans conference here in Halifax.
Well, that's a great question, and I kind of zoomed over it a little bit. Oh, actually, no, I didn't even put up the slide about my own sort of credentials here. But one of the other roles I have is I'm on the OES Joint Oceans Advisory Board, JOAB, and so in that role, I'm involved in the oversight for all Oceans conferences, not just Halifax in 2024. So that's an advantage for us because I'm getting an education, very in depth as I go along, and getting that engagement, getting that collaboration and the mixing between industry, between the research topics, the presentations, the posters, and the exhibitors, the delegates, is a really core concern of planning an Oceans conference, and it's something we're going to integrate from the beginning into Oceans 24 Halifax. And it's simple things. It's like putting your coffee breaks in the exhibit hall, or the layout of the sessions, the layout of the posters, the layout of the venue, and then it's more creative things like special events and B2B meetings. So there's lots of things that you can do, and it's an opportunity for people to be creative. And so if people have ideas, if you see something at another event that you think is just fantastic, then please reach out and let us know.
No, that's great. I've probably gone to maybe a dozen Oceans conferences over my career in various locations, and they're always impactful in a whole bunch of ways. I was really struck by the last two conferences I've gone to were the one in St. John's, and the one most recently in Seattle. And in both cases, the gala event, in the case of the one in St. John's, it was at their beautiful, the rooms, their wonderful downtown St. John's museum. And in the one in Seattle, as you mentioned earlier, it was at the Museum of Pop Art, which was, it's a Frank Gehry designed building that's just spectacular in and of itself. How are we going to beat that? I mean, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about some ideas that are in discussion about how we're going to one-up that, because those were really impactful events, and not just from a sort of a social point of view, from a business networking point of view, they were really well run. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, that is a challenge for sure, and I think that we can rise to that challenge because Halifax and Atlantic Canada has a lot to offer. We haven't decided on a venue or a specific format for a gala, but you're right, that is an opportunity to amplify the social aspect as well as the professional aspect of an Oceans conference. It's a great opportunity for people to give creative ideas to us. I think we know some of the venues we have. We've got the Cunard Center, we've got the Pier 21, we've got the Convention Centre itself. There's a little more creative stuff like the outdoor space on the Citadel. And maybe between now and 24, there'll be some other options that we don't know about yet, but we definitely are looking for some good creative ideas.
So it sounds like an open opportunity for those in the audience and beyond to sort of throw some ideas in. Not that there's going to be a democratic process here. At some point, there's going to have to be a selection made. But if you've got ideas, I think it's fair to say, send them your way. That sound good to you, Chris? Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. Yeah,
cool.
This is the time to give us creative ideas.
So in past conferences, there's often a byline, there's often a theme, and it's chosen by the organizing committee at some point prior to the start of the whole thing. And I know we're 4 years out, so it's way early to be picking that theme for the Halifax conference in 2024. But do you have any personal thoughts on that, on the kind of things that might be topical and relevant for the OCEANS conference here in Halifax?
Boy, yeah, you're hitting all the good questions right away. Yeah, I mean, again, it's an opportunity to get some input right now. We would love to have a theme that is compelling and topical. I mentioned in one of my slide decks, Halifax is an Arctic gateway. That's one area of interest. Personally, I am interested in sustainability, and I think that's another potential one. A lot of people maybe or have heard of briefly, but maybe don't really know a whole lot about that UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development that I mentioned briefly. That process is ongoing. You're going to see it pop up at a lot of events, science events, engineering events, technical events. And I'm not saying that that's going to be our sole focus or theme, but it's definitely going to be a component of OCEANS conferences. So there's a few things there. And again, it's an opportunity for people to have some input and be creative.
I know at the UN Decade meeting that was here in Halifax that you and I were both attending, there was also an Indigenous people theme that might be really interesting as well to work into what we're doing here for OCEANS 2024. So we have here at COVE a really good working relationship with Olneweg on our First Nations relationship side. So that might be a really interesting one to work in as well as a sub theme of the whole conference.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the 6 main themes of the Ocean Decade. The UN Ocean Decade is the capacity building, and that capacity building is a pretty broad tent. You can think of technical capacity building, like engineering new stuff, or you can think of training new scientists, but you can also think of embracing new viewpoints, and that could be embracing traditional and indigenous knowledges. So there's opportunities there for sure.
I'm getting some questions from the audience actually coming through, and I just want to kind of throw those into play as well. So one of the questions coming in is there a sort of an accompanying persons program? So how often do people bring their families with them when they're traveling to OCEANS conference? I know it's a very international delegation. I mean, you've got people from all over the world. In your experience, do they sometimes bring family members, and is that part of the planning process?
Yeah, so a partners program would typically be a part of the planning process. Obviously, we haven't started that in detail yet. I don't have a sense of how big of a component that is, but I'd like to think that one of the selling points of Halifax is it's a destination that people want to come to. They don't want to just come for the trade show or for the papers and posters, but for everything. And so, yeah, I think there will be a partners program, and there's the obvious tourist attractions, but it's there's maybe that Monday, that on-water demo day, or the tutorials that would be traditionally a part of an OCEANS conference. Maybe we make that into something that's broadly interested to the public, open to the public, of like ocean awareness, not just here's my latest greatest engineering thing, that plus more.
Yeah, we have a wonderful asset in the waterfront of Halifax and the harbor in general. So obviously making the waterside demos a part of this would be a really spectacular opportunity for public engagement just beyond the delegations as well, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do hope to partner with organizations like COVE and the whole community here to make that component as I don't want to overuse the word beneficial, but make that component impactful, and maybe public awareness is a part of it. Yep.
You mentioned briefly that there's a specific component for student engagement. So there's a student paper element of this, and
yeah.
In Seattle, it was really, really wonderful to see a delegation both from the Nova Scotia Community College and from the Marine Institute in St. John's, women in ocean tech, attending the Seattle conference. So to touch on those two themes, talk to me a little bit about how students will potentially be involved in this, and how we're going to deal with the involvement of women in ocean engineering as well. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, boy, I'll try to organize my thoughts here because there's a lot I could say on that topic. And I think that will be something we really want to do a good job of. Students are the future, and we want, my personal vision is events of all kinds, not just this one, but anyone that I'm involved with would be something that would be inclusive and embrace all of the strengths that we have in the community. So let's see, try to organize my thoughts. Students, absolutely. It was fantastic to see the student delegation in Seattle. And I thought that I really give credit to ACOA. I think that was the driving force behind that. It wasn't really an Oceans thing, it was an ACOA thing, but we'll be looking to sort of extend and leverage those partnerships, bring in students to Halifax's Oceans Conference, and maybe there's an opportunity to do more of that in other venues too, not just in Oceans. Obviously, the strong community here between the universities, between NSCC, we would love to leverage that. On the society and on the sort of top level organizational side, there has traditionally been a student poster competition at Oceans. And so that's been an opportunity for students to showcase their academic work, their research. And that has been funded by some big funders like the US Office of Naval Research. They have been a supporter of the prizes, and the prizes are basically funding people. So you compete in the poster competition. If you win, that means you're funded to go and present your poster at Oceans. Women in engineering, the IEEE Oceanic Engineering Society has been putting a big emphasis on really supporting diversity of all types, but especially gender diversity in Oceans events and in the society governance. And so there's a program starting up within OES to sponsor women in engineering members to participate in Oceans conferences and also to participate in society governance. And one of the things they do is have a side event at every Oceans conference, and that will presumably happen in Halifax as well. And again, another opportunity for creative ideas. We'd love to have people say, hey, there's this other great thing you could do. One thing Seattle did really well is they had the student mixer as kind of a speed dating thing. And they had a bunch of experienced industry professionals, society leaders, key people, some really high profile people came out to that student mixer. And then we kind of did this speed dating thing. And I don't think I'm a high profile person, but I was fortunate to be able to go in my society volunteer roles. And man, that was a fantastic event. And the one thing we got from feedback, and I see a comment from Hannah here about that, was we thought, oh boy, if we could have done that before the big opening for the whole conference, then the students would have had like a network of people already. And that's the kind of thing we're going to learn and apply, not just in Halifax, but in other Oceans conferences.
I feel like we're having an ideation session here, you and I, Chris. So hopefully the audience is finding this interesting. And do throw your questions in if you have them. Just to kind of go off of that. So one of our agendas here at COVE is reaching back even further into the education system, into the public schools, and pushing the Ocean STEM agenda. And Dr. Sherry Scully is our lead on that, obviously. Would you consider, is there an opportunity for reaching even further back, earlier than the colleges and universities, into the public school system for some engagement in Oceans 2024?
Well, I'm glad you spoke a little bit longer in that question, because it gave my brain a chance to click. I personally did not have, a time slot booked out in the schedule for that particular thing, but I do know that there's local volunteers who are interested in that topic. I mean, our program chair, May Sito, has been involved in the ROV mate competitions for years. Another few volunteers are involved in the teacher in service program, which is a thing that IEEE does to reach out to K-12 educators. On the OES side, there are a couple of really great success stories in the US. There's a high school in the US that has a particular focus on ocean tech. I think it's called First Flight, and they have students that they sponsor to come, high school students that they sponsor to come to Oceans and present papers and posters. There's a National Academy of Oceans. There's some sort of ocean bowl, like a high school event for high school students to learn about ocean science. So there's all these little threads, and it'd be great to be able to tie some of those together. And so, yeah, there's absolutely opportunity for pre-university engagement and outreach, and we'd love to be able to integrate that into the program.
I see Doug Phelan from ACOA sort of in the chat room here saying, yeah, he's thumbs up. They're going to continue to support student engagement. So we'll hold you that, Doug. Thanks very much. That'll be
awesome.
Good.
That's awesome.
That's wonderful to hear. I want to talk a little bit about the scope and scale of the effort. And I haven't been involved in one of these for a long time. I think it was Oceans 97, but I did watch Kathy Hogan and the team over in St. John's, and it is a monumental amount of volunteer labor that goes into pulling this off over the 4-year period. Just speak a little bit to where you think those kinds of volunteer hours may be best applied now and going forward in the future, just to give the audience a sense of where they may be able to plug into the effort.
Oh boy, that's a real good question. You're right. There's absolutely going to be a lot of hours, and when we get down into year 2, T-minus 2 years, T-minus 1 year, we're going to have a big team, and I'm hoping that we can get a few really strong supporters from the community that might be able to step up with some serious in-kind investments in terms of person hours and labor to help us out. There's a lot of work, the obvious stuff in planning the trade show, but we have a professional conference organizer, a paid, support company that will take care of things like, setting up booths and selling sponsorships and that sort of thing. But the technical program, the papers and the sessions and reviewing all those abstracts, there's a lot of work there. But then before that, there's the work of all this stuff we've been talking about, this ideation, taking all the great ideas, crystallizing them into a program, and then running all those events, running the student mixer, running the main mixer, running the, planning the gala, all that stuff. There's a ton of work there. And so, right now it is at that ideation stage. Give us your great ideas, but then think about, your organization, your own personal schedule. Are you able to set aside an hour a month, an hour a week, more than an hour a week? Because a year or two down the road, I'm going to probably come knocking on a few doors.
Yeah. No, it will take a lot of effort, but I sense there's a good community support for this, and so I don't think you'll lack volunteers going forward.
No, absolutely not. I want to interrupt you for that thought, because that alone was really what gave me the confidence to start this process 2 years ago, and then go into the pitch in Seattle last year without any hesitation. I mean, yeah, I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm only worried about the workload. I'm not worried about, is it going to be successful? Because I know the community is here, the interest is here, the engagement is here, and it's the right fit. I don't have to convince anybody to sell them a product, because I believe in it. This is the right time, the right place to have an Oceans conference.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you're leading, because it does take that kind of enthusiastic sort of attitude to get the whole thing to come together. There is an obvious elephant in the room question here, Chris, around COVID-19. Now, I recognize this is 3 years in the future, but I know that you and the planners at IEEE are probably thinking about that at some level. Can you just speak to us about what your perspective is on the pause that's been hit around international conferences in the short term, and what conferences might look like going forward as a result of that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, obviously that's a big topic, and I feel I'm a little bit grateful that we're far enough away that I hope by then we're going to have a good understanding of how things work out. Yeah, I mean, of course, we're open to modifications and various adjustments to accommodate the new normal or whatever it is. I've always been a person who thinks that there's a lot of value in the in-person interactions, the networking, the social connections. So I do hope that we retain most or all of that component. But we'll be watching other events. And in one of my other roles, I'm actually organizing a major worldwide IEEE volunteering conference for this year. And that conference is definitely in that category of, okay, we're going to have to make major adjustments. And so, we're going to be looking very hard at how those events adjust and deal with the realities of the travel restrictions and the distancing restrictions, and apply that knowledge and learning to Oceans 2024. But we have time to learn those lessons and apply them.
No, it's a challenge. I mean, in the short term, we're going to have to virtualize a lot of things, as we are with our Ocean Connector. But I still, at some level, feel that that face-to-face networking is still a hugely important part of science and engineering and business at some level. So hopefully the new normal is not too far from that as we all get back to work.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder if there's, can you speak to me a little bit about the sort of based on past conferences, how does it work in terms of being a delegate going to those conferences? Can someone off the street come and attend? What does that cost in rough order of magnitude terms? How do you get a paper presented at the conferences? Just speak to this sort of, for those that are not IEEE members and maybe not, inclined to be academic paper kind of people, just speak to us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, sure. Generally speaking, events like this and OCEANS specifically is open to the general public on a registration basis. You have to pay to attend to some extent. Some things may be available without a registration fee. For example, some of the tutorials or workshops, or maybe there's a lower cost to just go to the exhibit hall and not attend all the technical sessions. But typically, the registration fee for the whole week is somewhere between $500 and $1,000, and that covers the technical sessions, the exhibit halls, the tutorials, workshops, the coffee breaks, the gala dinner, and all that stuff. And there's usually some discounts for people who are members of IEEE or MTS, and then there's further discounts for students and for other categories. And typically, because the conference is running on this sort of like 6-month rotation twice a year, we would typically have calls for papers and abstracts opening up, 12 to 6 months out, and then registration opening up kind of around 6 months out. So you're not registering for 2 conferences ahead. You're only registering for 1 conference ahead. This year is obviously a little bit of a special circumstance because the Singapore conference was supposed to be happening like a week ago. It's actually happening in August, and even that might have to be adjusted depending on circumstances. And then we've got Gulf Coast in Biloxi, Mississippi in October. So that right now there's papers open for several conferences and registration open for several conferences, but that's an unusual situation.
Chris, you mentioned early on that it was not to simplify, because I know you put a lot of work into it, but it was a fairly easy sell to the organizers to bring the conference back to Halifax. So clearly there's an attraction of Halifax as a venue for this event. To turn the question the other way, what's in it for us? I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way. I just want to explore that question for you. So we're doing a lot of work here in Halifax, in Nova Scotia, in Atlantic Canada, and broadly in Canada at large to up our game when it comes to ocean technology, ocean science, and ocean business. Why do we want this conference here in 2024?
That's a good question. And you're right. It was an easy sell because the society, senior leaderships, the volunteers, the decision makers, they do know about Halifax. I mean, it's not aspirational for us to say that we are an ocean tech hub globally, not just regionally. It was an easy sell because they want to bring a conference here. They just needed us to show that we were willing to do the work and follow through. And for us, what we get from it, well, we get to bring all of our networks, all of our partners here. And so, for my own employer, for JASCO, we can send more people to the conference if it's right in our backyard. We will see more of our suppliers, more of our customers if it's right here. So I think that it's sort of a pretty immediate, obvious benefit. We're bringing the world to us rather than us having all individually go to the world. So that is the immediate thing. But then the larger network effect is that by bringing the world to us, they're going to see that, oh, this is the place where ocean tech is happening. Well, maybe I need to be thinking more about Halifax when I'm looking at buying stuff, or when I'm looking at selling stuff, or when I'm looking at finding a research collaborator or finding a new employee. And so, it's just going to really highlight Atlantic Canada, Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, Halifax. It's going to, just bump us back up in everybody's collective memories.
It's interesting when I've been to other ocean conferences, the ones that tend to work well have a really good attendance from the local community, not just the companies, but also the institutions. And so, let's hear your thoughts on how we're going to make sure that we get a really good turnout from the world-class research institutions like Dalhousie, like the Bedford Institute, like DRDC, and then operationally, the Navy commands and folks like that. Any thoughts on how we make sure we get a really good turnout from those groups?
All excellent questions. Yeah, we've already touched on a few of those threads. We've got ACOA stepping up to support the Atlantic Canada Pavilion to have exhibitors going to OCEANS conferences this year, next year, the year after. That's going to mean that we're all in the mindset of Oceans is coming to Halifax and we all want to be there. Same thing with supporting the student delegations, the cohort that went from NSCC and Marine Institute, the student poster competition, all those are little threads of it. But, you know, a lot of it's going to be up to all of us, people on this webinar, the Oceans 2024 team, the whole community, to promote the concept widely. One of the things I want to tell people is that the intervening conferences, Oceans 21, 22, next year is in San Diego. San Diego's a big Navy town. 22 is in Hampton Roads, Virginia. That's a big Navy town. So I really hope that the Royal Canadian Navy thinks, let's go to San Diego. Let's go to Hampton Roads because we will be building our network with our US counterparts. And then they're going to want to come to Halifax in 24 because the networks have been built and then they want to come and sustain them and participate here. So there's, you know, there's a lot of threads in that discussion, and it's where we want to have people involved. And just like that little line in the slides earlier about socialize the idea. I mean, it sounds kind of like a throwaway thought, but really that's a pretty important message.
Yeah, indeed. In past, I know in the 97 conference and the 87 conference, it was very good representation from the senior leadership of the Navy. And so that then brought into play large numbers of engineering officers and associated people in their world of the conference. And so I think it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't get the Navy fully engaged. I don't know if there's any Navy folks online, but not to put you on the spot, but give that some consideration for 4 years from now and in the work up to it as well. Chris, I wonder if you've got any other thoughts for the audience. There's, I think, upwards of 100 and something people online between Zoom and YouTube right now. Any other thoughts you have in terms of what you might be asking of people that are listening curiously about the Oceans Conference right now?
I should be more prepared for this question. We've covered a lot of it already. We've covered the contact me by email or respond to the forums if you have ideas, creative suggestions, if you want to be involved, if you think you would be able to be involved a year or two down the road. And I know a few people have approached me individually, and that's great. Supporting Ocean Tech in general, I'm going to need other people to think about, what's a way to engage those high school students, those university students, those grad students. How are we going to engage them now in Ocean Tech, have jobs for them, and have opportunities for them to present their research, to build their networks? We want to provide those venues within the Oceans Conference, but we need to be laying groundwork now so that, it's not, because it's really not about just a conference. It's really about building the Ocean Tech community, and the conference is just a focal point for those activities. I had another idea, but I can't remember it.
Well, while you're thinking of that, I'll just maybe ask you a question about, you mentioned earlier on that aligning other conferences that might be happening in and around 2024 here in Halifax might be appropriate. And I know there's been at least preliminary discussions with OTCNS, for instance, around the H2O conference. Again, I don't want to put them under the gun, and there would obviously have to be a lot of decisions made on their side, but just speak to me a little bit about what your thoughts might be on how we might align those other conferences for 2024.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's an opportunity for us to lay some of that groundwork. Like whatever ideas we come up with now, perhaps we can discuss with OTCNS and do some sort of similar things in H2O is doing, and coordinate our efforts so that we have established patterns, whatever. But when it comes to 2024 itself, yeah, I've already said we want Oceans to build the community up. We don't want to compete. We don't want to try to be better than someone else's event. We want to have all our events working together to build the Ocean Tech community. And so, yeah, we have had a preliminary discussion with OTCNS, and we don't know the exact format or form that coordination and collaboration is going to be. But I think that it is safe to say that we will want to coordinate and collaborate with H2O. We want to support H2O in 21, 22, 23. And I think that H2O is going to want to support Oceans in 24. And exactly how that works out in practical terms, I think we will be announced as soon as we know what it is. But we're definitely going to be coordinating, not competing.
I see some questions coming in out of the corner of my eye here from, or some comments coming in from folks at Supernova at Dal. So it sounds like there's enthusiasm for the idea of getting younger children involved in this on some participatory basis as well. So obviously something we need to think about going forward, and sounds like a really cool opportunity to get some young folks involved in the community. I'm struck always by meeting people of my generation who will often say, my first engagement with a real conference was an OCEANS conference. It was certainly my first conference. I think it was Boston in 1980 or somewhere around there. And those are iconic opportunities to bring new people into the industry, whether it's, as a fresh graduate or frankly, even reaching back into the public school system. These are really impressive conferences to shape people's future careers.
Yeah, I saw that comment from the chat box about the Supernova program and looking for professional mentors. And man, this is the part of the reason that why we should care about OCEANS 24 in Halifax is because this is the biggest group of ocean professionals, potential mentors, potential partners, collaborators that we can possibly bring to Halifax. Like, this event has the potential to fill the biggest venue that we have. So this is as big an opportunity as we could possibly imagine for this location, this time, to bring together that community, those mentors, again, partners, collaborators, and that's why we should care. And I'd love to see a strong program for mentorship, and somebody just mentioned opportunities for startups. I know the OCEANS conferences now, the last year or two, have been doing like startup pavilions and little things in the exhibit hall to encourage participation from startups. There can be all of these threads. There can be outreach to pre-university. There can be student programs, grad student activities, mentorship things, and there can be startup things. And we want to have all those threads because, again, it's not about, we want to have a great conference because my goal is to have a conference badge, but it's because it's really going to be an effective way to build a community.
I see. I can't help but notice a little comment from my old friend, retired Commander Ian Wood from the Royal Canadian Navy, saying, "Aye, Jim." So I think we've got a thumbs up support from at least a retired naval officer online, which is also cool. So, the wonderful thing about this discussion that I'm really enjoying is this ideation process. And I know the folks in the background listening to this probably have their own ideas. So I'm going to kind of wrap things up by just, again, repeating that if you do have ideas, if you do have a willingness to help Chris and his team bring this forward, now's the time to probably express that interest. And Chris, I know you have a final slide you're going to bring up here that just kind of, again, what a beautiful view of that attractive place that we all live in. And you begin to see why people see us as a really attractive venue for this sort of an event. So if you do have suggestions, ideas, or you just want to sort of put your hand up and say, I want to help over the next 4 years, you can see Chris's address there, CWHIT@IEEE.org. I know Chris is doing huge effort here on a volunteer basis to keep this moving, but he is going to need a lot of help over the next 4 years. And I think now's the time to step up and at least express that. I think it's fair to say, Chris, that doesn't mean you're going to get an instant response saying, please join this committee. It may take a little while, but building up that inventory, that coalition of the willing at this point, I think would be useful. Would you agree?
Yeah. That's exactly right. Right now, I'm just gathering interest. I'm not going to hit anybody up tomorrow with a committee job or something like that. That's at least a year or two down the road, and I'm going to make sure I understand what people want to do, what they're available and willing to do before we go. This is not a recruitment drive. It's just, if you want to be involved, let us know. We're building a list, and we're going to come back to you, a few months, 6 months, a year down the road, and start to figure out where we all fit, what we can all contribute. Because again, we're all the OCEANS 2024 team. And that, again, is why I had no hesitation in signing up for this 5-year commitment, because I started a year ago. I had no hesitation in signing up for this because I know that everybody is behind it, and we're the right place to have an OCEANS event, and it's going to be a really, really exciting and impactful event for the Ocean Tech community.
Chris, I want to end by thanking you so much for taking your time this afternoon. I know you're a real busy guy. Your business at JASCO continues to be pretty busy right now, and so
thankfully very busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So good for you, but I know you're stretched thin personally, and so thanks for taking some of your valuable time to talk to us about this exciting opportunity. I'm really jazzed about it. I think it's probably, as you said, the singular biggest event we can draw into Halifax. And I would put a challenge forward. Said you're saying that typically these are 1,000, 2,000 people, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to fill the new Halifax Convention Centre with 3,000 people if we do it all right. So that's a challenge.
That'd be fantastic.
Be something? It'd be great. So thanks again, Chris, for your time. I want to close with a couple of just finishing comments. We will be sending a poll out to those that have been online during this event, just asking you some questions about, first of all, whether this format is working for you in general for Ocean Connectors, because again, to remind you, we'll be doing another one in May with the folks from Ignite Labs. And so if the format's great, let us know. If you've got things you can suggest about how to improve it, let us know. And then there'll be some questions as well about the OCEANS Conference itself. And so we'll stay tuned for that. You should see some stuff coming your way, either through Zoom or YouTube or directly into your email inbox. This has been recorded, and the event itself will be available on our webpage here at COVE. So again, www.coveocean.com. So give us a day or so to get that wrapped up, but take a look there and you may be able to play this back or send it to your friends for their personal entertainment. I'll say one more thing, which is that the tradition here at Ocean Connectors is that they're part presentation, but also a wonderful networking event. We haven't figured out a way how to virtualize wine, beer, cheese, and crackers yet, but I would invite you while you're in your own homes and residences to crack a cold one for yourselves and raise a toast to the OCEANS Conference coming up in 2024. I want to finish by saying a real vote of thanks to Leslie Monroe, who is the person that is always behind getting our Ocean Connectors events pulled together. And in particular right now, our friend Kyle Burton, who's sitting across from me socially distanced appropriately, that's been the tech wizard behind making this a virtual event. So I'm going to stop there. Hope you enjoy the rest of your days. Stay well. Please heed all the health authorities as you go forward doing your business. And we all look forward to seeing you again in May for the next Ocean Connector. Cheers. Have a good afternoon.